All right, what I'm going to do today, real quickly, and we'll be done by 2. This is the last lecture. All right, I know you're all you're supposed to be heartbroken. All right, we went through chapter 1 in the Deitel text last time. I'm going to very quickly just page through the stuff that's in chapter 3, but that's the thing on the tip calculator, so we shouldn't have to do that. And then I'm also going to talk to you about what's in chapter 2. I built the Welcome app. It's a very simple app. There's no code in it whatsoever, but I do want to mention some of the issues that it has. Plus, I of course, what an idiot I am. And that is, this morning I started up the emulator, boom, created the project, boom, ran the project under the emulator, looks great. Not a problem, okay? Then I went in and they said, well, change it so it can also handle Spanish. That's when I started having the problems. But then I went back and I thought, well, I'll just show them what I've got. Now the emulator I let it up there for 20 minutes. It just sits there and does nothing. I don't even get the key at the bottom. I don't get anything. It just sits there and it looks a lot like that. And there's nothing. When you go and you move it up, there's no key down there. There's nothing down there. So I don't know what the problem is. I've tried starting it, stopping it 3 times. So I don't know what the problem is. All right, but I'm going to let it sit and hem and haw or whatever for a while. Yeah, I guess that's the bottom line, is you should never shut it off. Now, I don't know why Deitel does this, but to me that's very small print. Okay? But this is from the one that we just went over. So, in other words, we did this one. Okay? I will tell you, his works, again, with mine, all I did was grabbed his code, put in my comments, and I managed to break it. I don't know how. All right? And I did create the interface, and I didn't see anything now that looked different from his interface. But the latest one that's out there is his. All right? Not only that, and I've shown you this before, but I want to say it again because I'm trying to be complete here, and that is that, just so you know this, if you do go out to the P drive, you know the drill. But what I want to show you is this, and that is for spring. That's for the Design and Implementation Projects class. The source code is all out there from the book from Ullman. Ullman does not provide PowerPoints, so they're not out there. Ullman does not provide a PDF, so it's not out there. For the Android class, as you'll notice, I've already got the PowerPoints, the source code is out there, etc. Okay, so that stuff's already out there from the book that we're going to use. For the iOS class, yeah, right. The book isn't even published yet. So once it becomes published and they give me stuff, I'll put it out there as soon as I get it. All right, but what I'm telling you is there's stuff out there for most of the classes. The other thing is, since a couple of the people who are here weren't here earlier, and that's fine, especially if you weren't in the class. But just so you know, I sent out an email to everybody letting you know that the virtual desktop will be down, literally down, from December 12th, from December 15th through January 12th. They are getting all new hardware that they're putting all this stuff in to house it, and they're getting some new software. Your virtual desktop will not change. Ideally, what will change is the responsiveness. Will change a lot after we come back from break. I have no control over that. That also means for me, if I want to go back and write some C# programs or some Java programs, I've got to load this stuff on the regular on the regular desktop the school lets me use. I can't use a virtual desktop either. All right. So I feel your pain if you have any pain. All right. All right. So we have, like I said, we've gone over chapter 3 here, and we built this. Bless you. By now, hopefully you've got somewhat of a comfort level of using this properties window that's inside of Eclipse. It's not the best in the world, and a lot of times, I don't know about you, but when I click the ellipsis and it brings up a box with all the different possibilities, it's a pain in the butt. It's like there should be a much easier way to do it than that. So you say, well, yeah, there is. Just type the stuff in. And when you type it in, a lot of times it brings up that same darn box. All right? So it's just something that we're going to have to live with. I wish they had this set up better. When you've got a property like gravity that's in there 3 or 4 times, in the same properties window, there's got to be a way that's better than what they did to separate this stuff out so you know exactly what you're setting, etc. And I don't think that at least this editor does a really good job. Now, John has looked at Android Studio. Mike has looked at Android Studio. Jeff has looked a little bit at Android Studio, but you know what? I don't want us to have to learn another IDE for fall, or for spring rather. I just think that's just too much. So I'm not planning on it. If you say on the other hand that, well, I put Android Studio on my own machine and I want to use it, then go ahead and do it. I'll figure out a way to grade your stuff. I'm not worried about that. All right. So this is what the completed project should have looked like. Again, you put the amount in here. The slider went, I think it was what, from 0 to 30 or something like that. All right. And then based on that, that should have automatically, so your custom thing was the 15% was here, and the custom thing was going to be over here, and it should have added those two together and put the result down here. I don't think there's anything new there. The big thing is, again, you've got to get used to the terminology, such as, okay, text views, etc. Edit text, because they're different than what we've been using in the past. Big deal. I don't think that's a really big thing, to be honest with you. All right. We named them. Okay, we started to build it. Again, this became much more of a cluster than I thought it was going to be. But you know something? I said this to you before, and I'm not trying to just blow smoke at you. And that is, if we're going to have problems, I want to have them now. I don't want to have them in spring when we start this back up again. So even if it's relearning, you can unlearn a lot in a month. All right. So even if it's relearning, hopefully this won't take you too long until it makes sense again to you. All right. All right. Again, going in there, we went into that strings.xml file. This has changed too in the last few versions of this product. It used to be when you did the strings.xml, when we did it last year, it didn't look like this, where there was a r.string and a string. That was done differently. Okay, now that's the way they want you to do it. Okay. So this was the final GUI design. Then we came in and we started to create the actual code. All right, we talked about the fact that because it's Android, you're going to be adding a lot of Android stuff, so to speak. The stuff that's in here on this slide right here shouldn't really look that new, except that in the past we've always said private int and private double, etc. Now, what are these? These are basically going to be local variables that are going to hold a value that are in these text views. That shouldn't be anything that really is all that surprising to any of you anymore. All right? And remember, when we do this, all right, in here, what we're doing is what's referred to as inflating the GUI. And what that's doing is it's taking all the stuff that's in that R file that's associated with the XML, and behind the scenes, it's actually building the equivalent Java code for you. All right, so what I just said was I'm putting it in generalities, but basically that's what's happening. All right, but a lot of the stuff that's in here shouldn't really look that new to you, other than the fact, again, that we're working with different kinds of controls. All right, the stuff that's in here should look pretty natural and normal to you, hopefully. All right, the good news is the project that we did, you might look at it as good news, or maybe after I say this, you'll go, well, that makes me sad. But this really wasn't a hard project. The problems that we had with it were getting the GUI to look the way we wanted it to look. All right? But the actual project itself isn't a hard project. Okay? And that's, I think, pretty much everything from this chapter. Oh, we really didn't look much at the manifest file, but we will talk about that next semester. All right? So don't worry about it right now. All right. Now, for this second one, this is what they have you build. No, I can't show you yet. Okay. But this is what they have you build. It's this right here. All right. And literally, I did it. I followed all the steps that are in the book. All right. We're going to go through those in just a second. But there is no code. In fact, what they had you do is just create a project. They wanted to call it Welcome, but I didn't know if we'd do it as a class or not, so I called it My Welcome. Where this said Hello Android, all right, I just changed the text to Welcome to Android App Development because that's what they have in the book. All right, and then we came in and we created what's called a new resource, and I said the size of this was going to be 40 SP, scalable pixels, kind of like 40 points. In other words, it was going to be bigger. All right. Then all of the images that Deitel wants you to use in here, he gives you. right, so I'm not going to go back to that, but in the P drive for the 156 class, all the images are in there. All right, so what I did was just grabbed two of them. I grabbed the bug, and I grabbed the Android. So there's the bug, and that's what's there. There's the Android, and that's what's there. All right, so I added those into here, and there's different ways that you can do it. To be honest with you, I kind of cheated. What I literally did was I just went to where they were, copied them to the clipboard, then right mouse clicked on here, and chose paste. Not the only way of doing it, but a way of doing it, and it worked just fine. Then when you walk through the steps that are in the chapter, it'll show you that literally there are 3 different images that you can choose from. This one, and then the regular Android little ping image that they have for the logo. All right. The other thing that they add, there's 2 other things that they talked about in this chapter. The first was a thing that's called talkback, and it's for people who cannot see. So the idea with that is if, you know, and again, I don't know how this works. You say, well, you can't put your mouse over there, but however that is done for them. The idea is if the mouse can go over that, it literally will speak to you. It'll say, welcome to Android app development. All right, and it's basically, it's almost built in for things like the edit text, like you see right here. It's not built in for images. And you may or may not be able to tell if you look on the screen there, there's a little triangle there, and there's a little triangle there. And what that is, when you get those little triangles like that, there's a product that actually runs, I think you can turn it off, but there's a product that actually runs that tries to check your Java code and your Android settings to make sure that they are in jive, that they are what they should be. It's called Android Lint. And when Android Lint runs and it finds something it doesn't understand, that's how it marks it, is right there. So if you've ever seen that before anyplace, that's where you're getting the error from. Again, I believe there's a way to turn it off, but even with that said, okay, yeah, you can turn it off. That's kind of like in the PHP class when I told you that you can put an @ sign in front of things to suppress the error, because that's kind of what you're doing. So by just turning something off, that's not solving a problem. That's basically saying, well, the problem doesn't exist. All right. But the steps that they told you to go through to try to turn talkback, all right, to try to turn that on for images, told you, I went out to the developer.android.com site to find out how to do it. And what they told you to do then was to go out here, for those people who actually have something that shows here, but I was supposed to click on home, and then once I clicked on home, the settings came up on here. You know, the things with the ellipsis, and I clicked on that for the settings. And when I did that, there was a thing that came back over here that said something like, it's in here. It's like system settings or something like that. And I double-clicked it like it told me to do. And then it said, then you got to go way down to the bottom of this, and when you go way down to the bottom, you'll find a thing that says personal. Not on my screen. So I followed their instructions, but I could only follow them to a point. All right? And the other thing is like, okay, let's say I followed the instructions. Everything's hunky-dory. It all works. Guess what? You can't use TalkBack with the emulator. So it wouldn't have really done much anyway. Okay? And the last thing that they asked you to do in here was this. If you look up on the screen here, I've got a values folder. Everybody can see that. They ask you to create another folder that's called values-es. ES is short for España or Spanish. Then they asked you to take this strings file and copy it from here to here, which I did. Then they asked you to go into that strings file. Okay, they asked you to go into it and change the stuff in it, as you can see, to put it in Spanish. Okay? And then they told you how to go in. At the end of the chapter, they tell you how you can go in and change it so it runs it in Spanish. That didn't work either. All right? So I tried doing everything that they put in there, but I was only semi-successul. All right? One of the things that's going to be discussed tomorrow, because Mary asked me, Mary Scholler, our CIO, was asking me, she said, how's the stuff going with the emulator and the stuff that they've been helping you with? And I said, well, Adrian was helpful. Terry, as always, was helpful. I said, I told her about John. I said, John's probably done more than anyone has. And between all of us, we've gotten it so that at least it works for most students' machines. Then and some of you have heard this already, but then we talked about the MacBook Pros over there, and she's the one who told me they can't leave the room. And then yesterday, the same person who told me that said, "Hey, you know what? Maybe we should check those out to students." I don't want to do that, because guess what? I'm the librarian, and I don't want to be a librarian. That's why, when you always say to me, "Are you ready to go?" Yeah, when I'm ready to go, I want those put away and locked up. So if Mark takes one, let's just say, and then Mark, for whatever reason, it could be totally a legitimate reason, is gone for 2 or 3 weeks, then that machine's gone, and I don't want to go through that kind of stuff. So we're not going to do that. But supposedly, one of the things that we're going to talk about tomorrow at this meeting that I have with the people from IT, supposedly one of the things that's going to be discussed is the possibility of them provisioning another virtual desktop, so you'd actually have 2 of them. And we'll make sure that the other one we have will be called something like Swift Virtual Desktop. All right? And then if that's the case, you would be able to actually run your Swift stuff from this machine or from your own machine at home. All right? That's what I'm shooting for. That's what I want to have. I've told her that, in my opinion, doing it any other way is just a waste of, almost a waste of time. We've had problems with some of the machines here. We may have more people in the class in spring. I went through it and I thought if everybody who could take it takes it, we may have up to 12 people. And what that supposes is that all 6 of those machines work and everybody will buddy up. All right? We've had situations this semester where one buddy doesn't show or both buddies don't show. We've had situations in here, all sorts of stuff. And I don't want to go through that stuff anymore. Plus, it's much easier for me to tape when I'm not constantly going back and forth between a Mac and a non-Mac. All right? So that's just me. All right. So Chapter 2 told you how to do this. It said learn the basic of using the Android development tools, the Eclipse IDE, etc., how to use a graphical layout editor, how to display text and images, edit properties, build and launch an app in the emulator, so make it more accessible with this talkback, and introduce internationalization. All right, so that's what was in there. So again, this is the program that you were supposed to build here. I just showed you mine. Mine's not perfect. It's okay. Okay? And, if you say, again, maybe this is the one I should have shown you first. Maybe we should have spent a week or 2 and done this first. That probably, in hindsight, would have made more sense. Guess what? Then that helps me for the next time I teach the class. All right? But for now, it doesn't do much for you one way or the other. All right. Some of the stuff that they show in here. Again, text view component, image view components. As it says, Android's top system bar shows the time, the battery indicator, etc. The bottom stuff, which is supposed to show your back button, your home button, and your recent apps buttons. Okay? We all know how to build the project now. We've gone through our own trials and tribulations of minimum SDK, etc. What I'm going to do is when we go through, if we build projects in spring, I'm just going to say, hey, I'm building it like this. And if you decide, no, I want there to be an earlier type of, API that you're using, or SDK that you're using, and I'm willing to put up with that V folder or whatever, then do it. All right? Because people are going to do what they're going to do anyway, and that's okay. All right? They give you a little history, and we've already talked about that kind of stuff. What's really interesting is in this slide, when they explain it in the book, they explain it the exact same way I did. This is stuff you'll never really need to jack with, so just accept all the defaults and click next. So someplace, I'm sure there's a very good explanation of what all this stuff in here is as you start to peruse your way through this stuff. All right? I've talked to you before about the fact that with Deitel, they're into bugs for whatever reason, so you can see it in here. All right? So there's the high definition, the extra high, etc., all the different stuff, the different pictures that you see in there. All right? All right, blank activity, we know what that is. They do a nice job in here. It's one of the reasons I picked the book. As always, when you are doing course evaluations, hint, hint. So, all right, for those of you who have not done them yet, please do course evaluations. But if you like books I've chosen, let me know. If you think the books I've chosen suck, let me know. If everybody writes down that, at the end of next semester, man, that Java book or that Android book just blew, I won't use it again. All right? I have no way of knowing. The problem is there are a lot of books out there. And guess what? There are a lot of really bad books out there. One of the books I thought of using, and if I find it, I've got it someplace. It's about 4 years old, but it's a really cool book, and I've gotta go look for it because I've got it someplace. I've got the PDF and I've got all the code. It teaches you Android. Now it's 4 years old, almost 5, so it's a little older, but it does it. It has you build Sudoku. Did I pronounce that right? The Sudoku game, and that's that's every chapter is that. And I thought of using that book. It's got good write-ups. I think it's called Hello Android, and I've got it someplace. All right, and if I find it, I'll put it out there for you so you can take a look at it. Some people would probably go through that book and really like it. Other people would probably go through that book and really hate it. All right, I know Mark said, for example, last semester that I remember, if I'm paraphrasing, so correct me if I'm wrong, that like with the Muroc ESP.NET book, I think he liked it. All right, in that same class of the people who took it with him, I had 3 people who came up and said, if I never see another Muroc book, I'll be happy. So you're never going to find anything that's going to please everybody. There is no magic book out there that has all the information, that's got tons of pictures and tons of code, and is written in an easy-to-read format, and is really short because you don't want to carry around something heavy. All right. So when you come in, this is what you've got. So that's what I had. Okay, he does have you come in and put his picture in there. I didn't do that. All right. And he explains what this stuff down here is, and maybe I didn't do a good enough job. But there is a logcat down there. If you want to have that, I know John said that he uses it a lot. I've used it at least on occasion. What logcat will do is while you're running your app, it'll basically log everything that the system is going through. And why is that important? Well, if you start to get a ton of stuff that's all red and it doesn't stop, it is a way to go back and at least hopefully try to debug. Sometimes you get red things, then it turns green, which typically means that whatever the problem was, it's been solved. Then it might go red again. It might go green again. But there's all sorts of things that can happen in here. Again, the biggest problem that we have in here in this class, this one, not the Swift one, this class, is the fact that we're using the emulator. And when you go online and you read about this stuff, almost always what you read is, the easiest way to solve this, hook up your Android phone to it and don't use the frigging emulator. It's all over the place. So what I put in for, all right, I put in a request for 10 tablets. 10 7-inch, 12, you're right, thank you. 12 7-inch tablets. And guess what? If we get them all, and there's 12 people in the class, I won't have one. I don't care. But I'd rather have each one of you be able to hook those devices up and then actually see what it looks like. All right, that's more important to me. All right. They talk about your Package Explorer window. You know this already. This is not exploded or expanded. It's collapsed. But there's a lot more in here than there is in a, quote, normal Java program, unquote. There's a lot of stuff in there. So they explain in here, if you take a look up on the screen, this is maybe one of the more important slides in the chapter, what these things are for. Drawable, as it says, holds your images. There can be other things in there, but they're typically image related. Layout, that's going to have your XML file in it. All right. Values, the only thing that we've really looked at in here so far has been the strings.xml file. When we go later on into the course, we'll look at colors.xml where you can set up your own colors. We'll look at dimensions.xml as it says, so we can set up standard heights and widths. All right, and we'll look at styles.xml, which is sort of like themes that we dealt with this semester, those of you in the ASP.NET class. You go, well, I wasn't in that class. It's sort of like using CSS. All right. All right. So what they told us to do then was to come in here, and they're telling you what some of that stuff in here is, and they want you to change that hello world, okay, to what we saw at the beginning, where it says, welcome to Android app development. Okay, so that's the first part of it. All right. Then they talk a little bit about the different drawable things in here. I'm not going to talk about those. Okay. One thing that some people like about Deitel books and other people don't is they have all these different types of things that you'll see throughout the book. Sometimes it'll be like a look and feel observation. Sometimes it'll be quick hints. Sometimes it'll be watch it so you don't do this type of thing. Sometimes people like that in books, and sometimes people don't like that in books. All right? It's funny because about 3 years ago, they came out with a Visual Basic book, and they were looking for reviewers, and they asked me if I wanted to do a review. I thought, yeah, okay, usually I get about $50, sometimes $100. They gave me $1,000. So sure, I'll do that. Hell, I'll help write it for 1,000. But the point is, they gave it to me in a PDF format, and I didn't have any PDF writable editor, and they couldn't find a good one here. So I went out on my own and found one. It was the cheesiest editor you've ever seen for working with anything, much less a PDF. And he had mistakes in some of these things, so I had to go and mark it up. That was a real pain in the butt. All right, I didn't make a lot of money, even though they gave me $1,000. I would bet you I spent over 100 hours. The book was 900 pages long, so I'll make you a bet that I spent over 100 hours on that. So I made $10 an hour. All right. But as he says here, low resolution images do not scale well. For images to render nicely, a high density pixel needs high resolution images. They don't scale up well usually, but they scale down better. So usually if you've got a high density, it'll do its best, the best it can to scale down. But if you got a low density and it scales up, it'll usually look kind of chalky, not really good. All right. As always, they give you the developer.android.com if you want to know more about this. All right. Then they talk about the outline view and they have you change the name. One thing I like about Deitel is they say, hey, from the get-go, don't use standard names. Change them right away, because that's one thing I've been harping on you to do also. They don't even like the name relative layout. They changed the name of this project to welcome relative layout. And they changed the name of this to, I think it's welcome text view. All right. And they talk some more about the properties window. Okay. And when you create the string, again, this is not the way that you used to do it. When you brought this stuff up, it did not look like this. It does now, so that's what we work with for the new string dialog. And when you set that up, you can, any property, just so you know this, if I haven't said this before, any property that you set in something like this, anything, you can always manually set it here. The reason that you'll typically do it in something like this is reuse. Because if you go into, as it says, create a new Android string dialog, once you create it, then it can be used all throughout the project. If you do it in here, then you have to manually copy it over to each one. That's a pain in the butt to do something like that. All right. Plus, you know you've got that consistency when you use the same one all over the place. Well, yeah, we did a little bit of work with the resource file. Yes. If you do it, right, yes. And the other thing is, let's say you don't use it. So you don't use a resource file. You do all of them manually, okay? And let's say that it's in your program 20 times. Now you want to change the size because people tell you that the pixel resolution isn't good, so you should make it bigger. Now you got to change it in 20 places. But if you do it in here, you only have to change it in one place. And then recompile it, and boom, it's changed all over. It's like a constant. All right? Basically, that's what it is. All right? Yeah, there you go. And you can take anything, virtually anything in your project, and hook up, like you said, a string or something with it. All right. And again, it's not just reusability, but a lot of times what you can do when you're much more adept at this than I am. But it isn't really that hard. Sometimes what people do is they'll build like a template and they'll put a bunch of stuff in there. And then every time they create a new project, they'll start with that template. So then you get the same common look and feel with each time you build an app. It's not a bad idea. All right. That DP, you can also write dip if you want, but it's density independent pixel. The SP is scale independent pixel. The DP is for anything that's not text. The SP is for text. All right. This is what I mentioned before, that when you start changing stuff, it brings up this box. I don't like this box. All right. I wish you just gave me a drop-down list, to be honest with you. I don't need the Android symbol and all that other stuff. That's how they do it. And if you say, well, that's not a bad thing, when you start to work with some of these properties like gravity, and they give you every combination, right, left, center, well, that isn't bad. Now right center, left center, etc. Now instead of being this big, it's now this big. And you're going through there, and it's a pain. All right? So when we got done, that's what I had. After they told you to scale the size, they also asked you to change the color, and they changed the gravity to center so it was centered. All right. Then they said come in and create one of these image views. All right, I put it right there, and I literally just dropped it right below it. It's a blank thing anyway, you don't see it. Then I came up, and it brought this up. And I now had the Android and the bug. I chose Android, I clicked OK, and boom, then I had that one. Then I created another blank image view. And it came up, I clicked bug and OK, and now I had this. So that was the whole thing. That literally is what they asked you to build in the chapter. All right. There was no code in it whatsoever. And they say when you run it in the emulator, it should look pretty much like this. And I should have taken actually a picture with my phone to show you that it actually did work. And it looked the way that it was supposed to look. All right. But as you can see, still don't have anything showing in that emulator. And I thought, well, maybe it is down here. I tried dragging up. I tried all sorts of stuff. It didn't like anything. I tried changing the size of this. It didn't like anything I did. All right. So I came to the realization it's just me. All right. And again, with this resource editor, some people like this, some people don't. You can usually, with most of the stuff that's in here, you can work with it in two ways. If you click resources, you get this, which typically drives people nuts. If you click strings.xml, it brings up the XML file. The reason that I'm telling you that is if we look at the one that I created here, all right, there's the resources. So if I wanted to add a new string for something, I click add, all right, and I come in here and I can use what's available, or I can enter something new if I want to, all right. But if I click strings, I can always manually go in here and enter it myself. You can always do that. So in other words, let me do it in the non-Spanish one. All right. So if I come into strings right here, if I wanted to put in a new string, I could enter them all right there if I wanted to. There is absolutely nothing wrong with entering the code in XML view. Most people don't do it because most people aren't real proficient in XML. All right. Now close to 10 summers ago, back when they used to encourage me to teach summer school classes, I asked people, what kind of class do you want during the summer? They wanted an XML class. So I've got a bunch of stuff out there if you're interested. If you want to learn anything about XML, but the only thing I would tell you as far as that goes is if you are interested, and what I'm about to show you, this is really old, but it's a great article. If you just literally go out to xml.com, which is a site that O'Reilly has, but if you go and click right there on what is XML, I think it's maybe 2008. What is it? 1998. Okay? It's 17 pages long, a technical introduction to XML. But it's everything you basically need to know when you work with XML. All right? The extensible markup language. You go, well, I don't care. Then don't read it. But I'm just saying that's the easiest, to me, that's probably the easiest way to learn it. I got onto YouTube and I looked at this. This was on how to turn on that accessibility, and I went through that stuff. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff out there that's designed to help you with this. I would say that if you decide that you're going to create an app, and what you're going to do for the design and implementation projects class in spring, if you decide, yeah, I'm going to create an app and I'm going to show that's going to be my project. Should you make it so it works with accessibility? That would be nice. All right. But if it doesn't, then it doesn't. Okay. I wouldn't hold it against you for not doing it. All right. Well, this is hung, but I was already on that slide 35, and that's about it. So that's really, basically, that's about all that I had. All right. So Thursday is going to give anybody a chance that has to come in here and do whatever, finish up any projects or whatever. I will tell you, this I can tell you for sure. I've already told the first year people, I will take work all the way through about 8 o'clock p.m. on Sunday. All right. But after that, I'm not even going to look at my mail on Monday. And in an ideal world, Mark and I would have full heads of hair. But in an ideal world, I'm going to have all the grading done by the time I go to bed, because there's a chance I might drive out to St. Louis on Monday. I don't know. But I have to have grades in by noon on Monday. All right. Questions on that? Again, you all got an email from me about the virtual desktop too. Okay. All right. That's all that I had.